So my name is Emilio Brandao, and I'm a PhD student at KTH in Stockholm, Sweden, under the supervision of Maike Schalk, who is also here. And we will be talking about two labs or labbings, and that's in two cases basically in Sweden. One is in Gothenburg in Hammarkullen, and then in the end a little bit about Tensta in Stockholm. Yeah, so going into Hammarkullen, I'll bring you there. This is a map of Gothenburg, and you see in the middle of the image, or right where it says Chalmers, around there, that's the city center, and Hammarkullen is marked in the northeastern area. Its northeastern is also a residential area that was built in 68-70, so about 55 years ago, and it has today 8,500 residents, pretty much like an island, as you can see, in the middle of woods. About 87% of immigrant background of those residents, with a lot of socioeconomic challenges, and has been statistically the poorest area of Gothenburg for over a decade. And so through these reasons has been subject of high levels of stigmatization, external narratives that expose the area and neglect the area from political decisions, etc., and also used as a generalization image of these type of areas for Sweden in many type of forums and media. But Hammarkullen is also a place which is very emergent in many other aspects, and it's also known for being a place where they have this kind of Hammarkullen model of development, urban, societal, and democratic, and ecological. It uses diversity as a resource. Just some numbers, about 84 different countries of background of those 8,000 people, and more than 100 languages spoken. So these are resources that they try to tap into. And the community is engaged, actively engaged, both political and social, in many different things and initiatives through two different community networks, in cultural events and cultural production, governance, circularity, co-learning, many different aspects. And our previous engagement comes, and this is where I come into the project. I've been employed at Chalmers University in Gothenburg for the last 12 years, and leading the initiatives that Chalmers University has had in Hammarkullen, and leading then 3 different architectural master studios that has been in the area, or Chalmers has been in the area for over 16 years, and with focusing on participatory design and co-creation, design and build, a lot of interventions in Hammarkullen and similar areas of this type of programs. And my role also includes even being a janitor, being program leader, being many different things there. So, and my research focus coming in from as a member of the KTH team is on how narratives can be flipped, how can we work with labbing the stories or story work as spatial community pedagogy and practice of narrative transformation, and also of place and community. So this is the relationship that I bring into my PhD, and I've been working on that side of the story, the architecture education that interacts with communities of residents in Hammarkullen, and I'm interested to know about how actual community processes happen, how do, in terms of being, organizing, doing, and learning, and then to see how that interaction between the two poles can be improved. So at the beginning of the research project, through the mapping of initiatives in Hammarkullen, most of them I already knew, but placing them in this relationship and this diagrammatical way, came this understanding of the value and importance of the two networks I mentioned shortly. One is a network of practices, and the other one a regenerative network. Here they are. So the network of practices is an operational, has no operational agency, is a network of where public authorities and institutions, also Chalmers has been represented. I've been representing Chalmers in that network for many years, and it's some sort of infrastructural resilience. It's kind of supports the community through, I think we listed almost 30 different institutions working locally within that network. And the other network is the Vårt Hammarkullen, or which is translated to our Hammarkullen, and it's more a regenerative network of people actively engaged in the community actions and with more agency, value-generating capabilities, and also an active voice in terms of public debate and discussions. And this is the network that has been fostering and working a lot around this Hammarkullen model. And as a researcher, I come into or have access to those processes. And these are images from meetings and workshops that I've been involved with in the two different networks. So next step in my research, then working through narrative interviewing methodology, of interviewing 8 different people involved in different actions in the area and trying to understand the stories connected to those activities. Through these narrative interviews, I identified 5 different empirical thematic settings for research and collaboration around organization and networking, cultural identity and cultural reproduction, around governance and dialogue, around material circularity as a modes of solidarity, and also about pedagogical practices of collaborative learning. And these 5 different empirical thematic settings are what becomes the basis of these concepts, or you can say a methodological choice that I call the labbing situations. Here tapped into the network again. This is a more updated diagram. And those dark blue lines is the connection between KTH and myself there, connecting to the different partners that come from those interviews or narrative interviews, and start these collaborations to see those stories and where the work with the stories through interventions can happen. And these are then 5 different, what I call labbing situations. One is labbing as worlding, working then with community organizing and networking, together with the 2 networks. Then the next one is on finding, or labbing as finding, working with cultural heritage, identity reproduction, working with the locally and internationally known Hammarkullen Carnival, which is an event that every year brings between 30 to 70,000 people for 3 days in the area. So it's the biggest carnival in Scandinavia. The next one is labbing as tuning, and this is tapping into the dialogues of governance between the residents and the housing company, which are regulated by law, but in the case of Hammarkullen suffer a lot of conflicts and miscommunications. So there we're working with tuning the voices of those dialogues. And then the next one is on sharing, or sharing and grassroots solidarity. So working with Mix Gordon, it's the youth center which has an initiative of solidarity connected to circularity, but also then bringing value to the Fixoteket, which is a project that is at this exhibition, and that has more top-down role into this development of circularity on a local level, so bringing value to this type of places or meeting places such as Fixoteket. And then the last one is labbing as listening, and here is we're talking about pedagogical practices of collaborative learning, and here is a collaboration with a local folk high school, which is an institution for popular education for adults, and developing courses for working with these community narratives through autobiographical narratives. And this is a list of methods tapped into each of these labbing situations that have been happening in parallel during this last couple of years. With the networks, I've been working with wording as resilience, as trying to kind of go around the word of resilience and working with what other words describe what community life is in Hammarkullen. So that's an active workshop working with that concept. And then a resource or a cartography of collective stories was in March. And then lately with the other network, we have been working with these futuring narratives and of unsettling boundaries of these different institutions to meet the needs of the community. And the finding, we have been working a lot with video and film, both as audiovisual narratives where participants of the carnival tell stories of the carnival all year round, but also embodied filming, documenting at the carnival events. Then at the tuning, we've worked with the dialogue conference, bringing the two different sides of this story of bad dialogue to meet, to expose their kind of prejudice and views over each other at a top level, not just at the bottom. And then also at the sharing, then here we have been running a workshop on sharing practices, where bringing the different groups were involved in the sharing, in the circularity initiatives. And at listening here, it has been the whole autumn of the last autumn, working with this then course on autobiographical storytelling through films and through films produced by members of the community, very personal stories, stories and narratives of diaspora, of their cultures, how they ended up in Hammarkullen, how Hammarkullen becomes a community that is their home, and how they find a lot of different things that relate to the spaces and tell these through the films that they produce, they film, they cut, and we followed that production throughout. And this is the timeline of what my research has been, and the different squares are these interventions in the 5 lines of the labbing narratives. And so the concept is that when you look at the reality of a certain neighborhood in society, you can, when you zoom in, you see the line, the timeline of the story of that place, of that community, as actually parallel lines of different things, different workings that have different intensities, and therefore the thickness varying. And then when you relate to that in your participative work, you relate to that specific thematic and that specific type of work. But the work is running from before and keeps running after. So that is the realization here, is that it's not an urban living lab or a project that has a beginning and end, has a story from before, has a story after, hopefully much longer after. Michael, you want to say a few words about the Tensta case?
No, I need only 3 minutes, probably. My name is Maike Schalk, and I work with Emilio on the Sweden case. We had a smaller lab in Stockholm, and let's say this lab was basically hosted by an art center, which is called Tensta Konsthall. You see a picture here. It is located in a very similar area as the area where Emilio works in Gothenburg. It's a late modernist dwelling, you could say. And this Tensta Konsthall is a self-organized place. It came about 98, when just a year before Stockholm became a culture capital the next year. So there was a little bit of money, and residents of Tensta, they came up with this idea to put an art center into an empty parking garage. So this art center has been a parking garage under a huge shopping mall that serves the entire district, which houses approximately 40,000 inhabitants. And our idea was to collaborate with this art hall for that the art hall would host a course with MA students mostly, but then also with practitioners, a lifelong learning course that KTH was putting together in order to make students get out into neighborhoods, meet children and young people in neighborhoods, and would sort of learn about areas in this kind of way. And interesting to know is in this case that there has been a collaboration between KTH, my university, our university in Stockholm, about 10 years that ended a few years ago, where they try to establish some sort of a preparatory architecture school to broaden recruitment of students, because there are very few young people from the suburbs that come and take up architectural studies. Then at the technical university, it's also not very easy to get in. So this was a year-long preparatory school financed by the university, by the city of Stockholm, and a gymnasium in the area which hosted at that time this preparatory school. And the entire project fell when the school was going to be renovated, but probably also there were some social problems. And that meant that it shows really drastically what happens when in these kind of networks, when you have very strong players but very few players, when one organization is basically falling away, or so that that might affect the entire network, or it might affect the activity that is happening. And so our idea was to create a course that would be implemented, established within the curriculum of the university. So this means that this is a course that has to be given every year. It's not the same as a preparatory school, but it's perhaps a small beginning. So it was very important for us to build up a structure for this kind of a collaboration between communities and the university. So you see a few images from the workshops here, and I show my last slide. You see on the top left corner, you see Tensta, you see the small button, it's the city center of Stockholm. You understand that this is a suburb that's quite far away from the city center. You see on the right-hand side the diagram, the mediation diagram that also was shown for the other labs before, where we try to show who are the, let's say, try to put together all these active actors, but also the funding actors, which is in this case extremely important. Thank you.